Ever feel like you read something, maybe listen to a lecture or even try a new skill and it just, well, it doesn't quite stick.
Like
Like
that.
the information is kind of in your head, but actually using it, applying it flexibly out there in the real world feels like trying to assemble something really complex with blurry instructions.
Yeah, that's incredibly common. We often confuse just passively taking in data with truly internalizing knowledge,
Yeah,
making it usable, adaptable.
totally. And that struggle, that feeling is exactly what our deep dive is tackling today. We're digging into a really thought-provoking article. It's titled Brainpage and Metacognition, Engineering Real-World Learning by Shiva Narayan Taxila Page.
Right.
And this source, it doesn't just talk about what you learn, but really fundamentally how your brain builds knowledge that you can actually do things with.
hmm And the article presents these two core ideas, they're interconnected, that offer a pretty powerful framework for thinking about, well, effective learning,
Okay.
Brainpage Theory, and the metacognitive engine.
Brainpage and metacognition.
Got it. So our mission here today is to unpack these concepts from the source, understand that sort of fascinating synergy between them,
Right.
and most importantly, figure out what this all means for you, the learner. How can these ideas maybe help you become a more effective builder of your own understanding?
Exactly.
The article really frames the learner not just as a student, but almost like an engineer, right? An architect of their own knowledge.
Precisely. The source frames effective learning as actively constructing these internal knowledge systems. It uses this metaphor, calls them brain pages of task transfer.
Okay, brain pages. So let's start there with the first piece, brain page theory. According to the article, what's the core idea here?
So at its heart, brain page theory, it's a principle from this field the author calls learnography. And it focuses on the neurobiology, like how knowledge actually gets encoded in your brain
Huh.
in a way that makes it, ready to use. And the key insight really is that this encoding isn't just about reading or listening passively.
It's fundamentally built through physical engagement and self-directed tasks.
So it's not like osmosis then, it's about doing.
Exactly. Doing. The article really emphasizes that multisensory engagement and something called procedural learning, which is all about mastering skills and processes through practice.
Mm,
Those are critical.
okay.
This active engagement, it significantly enhances retention, retrieval, and crucially, the ability to transfer what you've learned. It's a direct challenge to that traditional passive way of teaching.
Yeah.
It really replaces it with learning by doing as the kind of central mechanism.
So learning by doing isn't just a nice teaching philosophy. It's like the literal mechanism for building this brain page inside your brain.
That's what the source is suggesting, yeah.
Mhm.
A brain page is essentially that durable, stored representation of usable knowledge in your brain.
Okay. Usable.
And it's constructed through your physical, sensory, and motor interactions with whatever you're learning. The article breaks its development down into three key things. First, creating cognitive maps, from reading or observing information.
Right, like getting the layout.
Exactly. Second, motor encoding, it's learning through physical actions,
Yeah.
like writing, drawing, building something,
The doing part.
the doing part.
Yeah.
And third, autonomous modulation, which is basically rehearsing and applying the knowledge on your own time, self-testing. It's all about transforming information from a source, like a book or a lecture,
Uh-huh.
into usable book-to-brain knowledge.
Okay. I'm picturing it. Not just data input, but like physically building a mental model through action.
Yeah.
Now, what about the other key concept you mentioned, the metacognitive engine?
Right. So if the brain page is the knowledge structure you're building,
Yeah.
the metacognitive engine is like your internal guidance system, your quality control.
Oh.
Metacognition, it literally means thinking about your own thinking and learning. It's your conscious ability to, say, plan your learning strategy,
Okay.
monitor your understanding as you go along, and evaluate how well you've actually learned something afterwards.
So it's the self-awareness piece, like pausing to ask yourself, wait, do I actually get this? Or is this study method even working for me?
Precisely that. And when you combine this conscious reflection, the metacognition, with the active construction of those brain pages,
Right.
the article argues you get this really powerful tool for something called transfer learning.
Transfer learning.
And that's kind of the holy grail, isn't it? Being able to take knowledge learned in one situation and successfully apply it to new tasks, new problems, environments you've maybe never even seen before.
Okay, this raises a big question for me then. How do these two very different sounding things, this physical construction, the brain page, and this abstract self-reflection, metacognition, How do they actually work together to drive that flexible transfer learning?
Well, what's fascinating here, according to the source, is the synergy they create. See, brain page construction enhances transfer because that active motor-based process helps you build knowledge in these sort of modular, adaptable pieces.
Adaptable, how so?
Think of it like building with Legos. Instead of, say, carving one solid block, you can rearrange the Lego pieces later, right?
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Motor encoding, the physical part, creates these deep multisensory memory traces. That makes the knowledge more robust, easier to access in different contexts, and often this building process is grounded in what's called visuospatial learning, like understanding relationships in space, maybe drawing a diagram, building a model,
Uh-huh.
which helps transfer problem-solving strategies across even very different subjects.
So the very act of physically or mentally building the knowledge makes it inherently more flexible, more deeply rooted.
Yes, that's the core idea from the article. And the metacognitive engine, that's what powers this whole thing. It directs the construction.
Right, the guidance system.
It gives you the awareness to spot gaps in your understanding, which then prompts you to adjust your building process, maybe try a different way. It fosters flexible thinking, allowing you to consciously switch methods or approaches if your current one isn't, leading to solid understanding. And it drives self-evaluation, actively testing your knowledge construction.
Mm,
Maybe by trying to explain it to someone else or attempting a new kind of problem, or even just trying to like draw the concept from memory without looking.
I see. So Brainpage is the active hands-on construction job,
Mm-hmm.
and metacognition is like the project manager and the quality inspector rolled into one, making sure the build is solid, planning how to adapt it for new uses later on.
That synergy is exactly what the article describes as the core mechanism of learnography. It's this continuous sensorimotor feedback loop,
Then sorimotor feedback loop.
meaning your actions inform your understanding, which then informs your next action, and it's all guided and enhanced by that metacognitive control.
Gotcha.
And the source highlights that motor science is really key here. Things like handwriting your notes, sketching diagrams, building physical models,
Uh-huh.
even maybe walking around while rehearsing facts.
Huh.
These things engage the parts of your brain involved in movement and planning, like the cerebellum and the prefrontal cortex.
Whoa, hang on. So engaging specific brain regions through movement is critical. What does that mean in, simpler terms?
It means that by involving those areas of your brain that are designed for action and coordination, you're creating stronger, more connected neural pathways for that knowledge.
Okay.
It makes the knowledge feel more intuitive, more automatic when you try to use it later. It reduces the mental heavy lifting, the cognitive overload when you're applying it in a new situation.
Right.
And your metacognition, that's what helps you decide which action-based method is best for what you're learning right now, and crucially, when to switch tactics if you hit a wall.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. You're not just loading data onto a hard drive, you're actually wiring it into your action systems. So what are the big benefits this synergy unlocks? The article lists several key findings from the research, right?
Yeah, the research points to multiple advantages. First, accelerated learning. By actively building and metacognitively guiding, the idea is you can grasp complex topics faster, more effectively than just passive methods.
Faster learning, okay.
Second, deep understanding. You don't just know about the material, you internalize it in a way that really sticks and makes sense on a, fundamental level.
And the article also mentions this leads to less dependence on external instruction, is that right?
Yes, that's a crucial point. Students become more capable of directing their own learning paths. They can even explain concepts to others, activating what the source calls the small teacher model within themselves.
The small teacher, I like that.
And maybe most excitingly, it strongly promotes cross-disciplinary transfer.
The transfer again.
Yeah, those flexible knowledge structures and adaptable thinking skills, they can more easily jump from, say, understanding physics principles by building models to applying spatial reasoning in design, or maybe problem solving in programming.
That's the real payoff, isn't it? Building these adaptable knowledge modules guided by your own self-awareness naturally makes you better at applying what you know, no matter the situation.
The key findings from the source really underscore this. Actively constructing those brain pages. That strengthens deep learning and long-term retention by making content into those durable, usable neural modules.
Right, the usable bits.
Metacognitive tools, they cultivate self-regulated learning. They empower you to take charge, Set your own learning goals. Monitor your progress honestly. Analyze where you might have gone wrong.
They can control.
Engaging motor systems through physical interaction that activates key memory and application centers in the brain. And the overall student as engineer model that fosters the real-world transfer and adaptable thinking needed for, well, a dynamic world.
The source even highlights how things like collaborative learning and peer teaching can, turbocharge brain page development. Trying to explain something to someone else forces you to solidify and reorganize your own understanding in really powerful ways.
Absolutely. And the implications for, say, formal learning environments are pretty significant. The article describes this necessary shift from students being passive consumers to being active knowledge engineers. Teachers become more like facilitators, curating experiences, guiding the process, while the students become the active creators of their own understanding. It's presented as a fundamental paradigm shift, moving from just instruction-based teaching to learnography-driven learning.
So instead of just being taught at, you're empowered to actively build your own intelligence, like Concept by Brainpage, guided by your own self-aware metacognitive control system.
That's the powerful vision presented in the source, yes. The article's core argument is that the most effective, the most transferable learning really arises from the synergy of both active brain page construction and conscious metacognitive control.
Both together.
This dual approach doesn't just help you pass tests, it fosters this robust internalization that prepares you to apply learning far beyond, the classroom walls.
So what does this mean for you, the listener, right now?
Well, I think it means recognizing the incredible agency you actually have in your own learning. You can consciously shift from just receiving information passively to actively using your motor systems, your hands, your voice, even your movement to build those internal brain pages. And then using your metacognitive systems, your ability to pause, reflect, plan to guide and evaluate that whole construction process.
This sounds like the kind of transfer learning that truly prepares you for navigating complexity, for solving new problems in life, not just, recalling facts for an exam.
Exactly.
It's about becoming the intentional engineer of that book-to-brain knowledge transfer the article talks about.
The call to action from the source seems pretty clear. Consciously move away from passive consumption towards active construction. Develop and use those metacognitive skills. Strategic planning, monitoring your progress, honest self-evaluation, prioritize learning by doing. Actively engage your motor systems through techniques like drawing, writing, explaining things out loud, or building stuff. Embrace opportunities for peer learning if you can. And whether you're a teacher designing lessons or just a self-learner trying to pick something up, think about designing environments and approaches that inherently support this active, self-directed process.
It's really about activating that potent synergy between the building and the reflecting. And becoming a more confident, creative, and capable learner in pretty much any area of life.
Ultimately, it's about building your own personal brain page school, you could say, whether you're formally studying or just pursuing a new hobby, where learning isn't just about memorization, but about deep understanding, flexible application, and, well, thriving.
So wrapping this up, what does this deep dive into Brainpage theory and the metacognitive engine really mean for your learning journey? We've aimed to give you a kind of shortcut to understanding these powerful concepts from the source material, hopefully helping you become more well-informed. But as you reflect on this idea, this metaphor of engineering your own knowledge, maybe take a moment to think about your own learning habits. Where could you actively incorporate more doing? More physically interacting with the material, drawing, writing, maybe building models, explaining it aloud.
Yeah, really engaging with it.
And how often do you actually pause to engage that metacognitive engine, to ask yourself, do I really get this? Is my strategy working? What should I try next?
That self-reflection piece.
Exactly. What does it truly look like for you to be the architect of your own knowledge, not just in some formal classroom setting, but in navigating and mastering the challenges, the learning opportunities of everyday life? Something to think about.